with so much going on with Russia and Ukraine, it's sometimes difficult to talk about anything else because they seem kind of insignificant. But I just have to start off with a few things that are insignificant, perhaps. But it's pretty common knowledge now that the CDC has, at worst, been lying, and at best, misinformation and withholding information in order to get more people to get the jabbity jab. And this is common on mainstream media now. You can look it up, you can see it on any of them. Any of the major media is finally reporting things that we've all been talking about. Yeah, so that's kind of interesting. I did want to clarify a little bit. So I have a copy of the letter that was sent from the first presidency, and it isn't all that clear the direction that things should go. I think my initial information was a little, I'd read it, but not really internalized it. So I thought I'd read it to you all. Many of you already have this, and it's from the first presidency. And this is typically who gets these kind of things. That's why the August one was so put out by the newsroom. And there was somebody asked the question, why do you think they did it this way as opposed to the August letter? And this is my attempt to kind of answer maybe why. Just my opinion, if that August one would have been done this way, the way this one's been done, I don't know if we would even had any discussion and maintain the content of it. But I can't answer why. I don't know the reasoning why one was done through the newsroom and one was an internal memo. And this one is directed, and this came out February 18th is the date of it. It's to general authorities, general officers, Area 70s, stake, mission, and district presidencies, bishoprics, and branch presidencies. Okay, so general leaders to local leaders, they got these, and bishoprics would include clerks and executive secretaries and that kind of thing. The title of it is Pandemic Update Area Presidency Guidelines. So each area in the world has a presidency that consists of members of the quorum of the first quorum of 70. And there's a president and he has two counselors. The Utah area has gone back and forth. Utah has its own area, and that's where Sue and I live. So that's why, you focus on the areas that you live in. And so I think now it's an area presidency, where at one time a few years ago it wasn't a presidency, and I didn't understand it all. But anyway, I think it is. Utah has its own area, but you'll have the Southwest, you'll have the Northeast, you'll have the Pacific Islands, you'll have the South America and Northern South America regions, things like that. European, and then that'll be broken up. You'll have several in Asian countries and those kind of things. And they'll have an area presidency. And typically, I don't know if they still do this, but typically that presidency lives within that region that they preside over as an area presidency. And it's the purpose of these area presidencies is not only to make sure information gets out. They're not only the UPS guy or the delivery man, but they'll they'll do organization or reorganization of stakes, oversee that, that kind of thing. Of course, that comes through the Quorum of the 12 and the President of the 12, the acting President of the 12, President Ballard now, but then it'll go on down. These area presidencies work very close with the mission presidents within their area as well. So that's kind of how that works. So here's the letter, and it says, "Dear brothers and sisters," so that's kind of cool, but it's addressed to those that I read. And here it goes. "We are grateful that the Lord has heard the prayers of so many and provided the direction that has allowed us to navigate the global COVID-19 pandemic, which in some areas of the world continues. As governments begin to modify the requirements for travel, masks, and other protective measures, we offer the following direction." Okay. So this is, in their first statement to me, they're reacting to the governments around the world, because this is to all areas. This isn't just Utah or the United States. This is to all area presidencies, specifically general authorities and whatnot. Okay, so the next paragraph, and we are now encouraging area presidencies. That's that area, that presidency I was talking about, in consultation with stake presidencies, to determine on a local basis whether masks should be worn or other precautions should be observed in the various church meetings and activities. Now, to me, basically that's saying if the local laws have changed to where they're not mandating it or not, it's not an issue, then you guys might want to talk about that and see. Okay. In doing so, local leaders should consider the guidance of local health and government officials and local customs and conditions. Now, I'm not really sure why local customs would have an issue with this, but whatever. So as the local leaders are talking to area presidencies through their area authority, we have a lot of guys, right? Anyway, that should be part of the discussion. Is this mandated by government? If it is, then we might still have to do it. If it's not, then, Okay. So, third paragraph. For the time being, masks will still be required in temples. So this is a kind or a reference of saying, you don't really need to do it anymore, except for the time being, masks will still be required in temples where so many who attend are part of an elderly, more vulnerable population, and where our desire is to keep temples open and to have as many as possible participate. Now that's an interesting paragraph for me. Virtually everyone I've talked to, Sue and I try to go every week. It doesn't always work out, but close. At least for the last few months anyway. I kind of asked, hey, how's the mask wearing? And I haven't found one that really enjoys wearing a mask. Now, I don't know, but that's just me. Okay, the last small paragraph. And this is a good one. Well, they're all good. All the paragraphs are good. We thank you for your faithfulness in heeding the counsel provided by church leaders and pray the Lord's continued blessings upon you. Sincerely, Russell M. Nelson, Dallin H. Oaks, Henry B. Eyring, the First Presidency. So that's the letter, and I'm sure how I read it or conveyed it to you was like, hey, if you don't want to, don't do it, kind of thing. Here's what our stake put out the day after. So I think this was either a Thursday or a Friday, which is kind of typical for the church to put something out on, especially on a holiday weekend, just so it's kind of under the radar a little bit. It's just public affairs. This is how things are done in the world, you know. It's just funny how things happen. Okay, here's what our stake put out. And in my calling in our stake, I had an opportunity to put input in. I'm on the High Council, and so we got privy to what the stake wanted to do, but they wanted our input of all the High Council and the bishops. Bishops, High Council and bishops, not bishoprics, just the bishops and the High Council. And then based on the input, then they went and put out this letter Saturday night, an email, and sent it to all the members that have email addresses or allow the church to contact them. Okay, our dear stake members, given the first presidency and area presidency guidance and the current state of the COVID pandemic, we are no longer urging members to wear a mask at this time. We do understand that things can change quickly. If you feel that you are high risk or have other concerns, we encourage you to continue to wear a mask. I love that. I love that. We encourage those administering the sacrament to use appropriate sanitizing, squirt, squirt, hand sanitizer. I don't like that, but okay. Second paragraph. We encourage those administering the sacrament to use appropriate sanitizing and ask that all members that are sick or with symptoms stay home until their symptoms are resolved. That's pretty good common sense. It was interesting. There were probably 3 or 4 bishops that had responded. It was a holiday weekend. A lot of them were gone. In fact, the ward I spoke in last Sunday, the bishop was gone, the first counselor and the second counselor was gone, and the elders quorum present conducted the meeting. It was kind of funny. But anyway, 3 or 4 of the bishops wanted to continue to mandate the Aaronic priesthood, or whoever administers the sacrament, that they be required to wear masks. And of course, I had to pipe in and say, I don't agree with that. And they asked my opinion, so I felt free to give it. Because once you start down that road, now if parents of those young men say, hey, I want you to wear a mask, that's between the parents and the kids, then that's fine. But to have church leaders, bishops, whatnot, a local ward, make exceptions like that and say, if you're going to do the sacrament, you have to wear a mask when nobody else does, including the bishopric. I'm like, it didn't feel right to me. So I voiced that. Okay, let me start that paragraph over again. We encourage those administering the sacrament to use appropriate sanitizing and ask that all members that are sick, okay, I read that, yeah. If you're uncomfortable with attending meetings in person, we encourage you to reach out to your bishop so that he and we can stay attuned to your needs. We will continue to broadcast meetings, and I think they meant sacrament meetings, as needed, and administration of the sacrament home would still be approved individually through your bishop. So if you didn't feel comfortable going to church yet, but you wanted to participate, you could still access it through I think we do it through Zoom, but I'm not positive about that. And then if you wanted to do the sacrament on your own, it's not a blanket, everybody gets to do it. It's on an individual basis through your bishop. And then third paragraph. As things change, we ask for your increased amount of love for all. I love that. Both those who choose to wear or not wear a mask. What a novel idea. We also ask for your continued faith and prayers on the ending of this pandemic. In addition, if you feel so inclined, please continue your prayers for moisture in our area. Talked about that in my last video. We express our love for you, and with many trials and difficulties in these times, we recognize it requires faith and diligence. It really does, faith and diligence. We pray for your continued success. With love, our stake presidency. I love that letter, and it was just so cool to go to. So that came Saturday night, and Sunday, you know, I'm sure there were some people wearing masks that felt like they needed to, but with that information, virtually nobody did. However, there was one ward that I attended. I attended 2 different wards. The one ward I attended, all the Aaronic priesthood were wearing masks, and it was from one of the wards where the bishop requested that. So, I don't know. Not my pig, not my farm. I'm not going to worry about that one. But it is interesting how throughout the country, I know that both coasts, there's some radical leadership, political leadership that are still requiring all kinds of things. But I think for the most part, things are easing up. I mentioned Israel is no longer requiring. Well, in March, so in a week or two, they're going to no longer require vaccination for people entering, and they're going to accept people. It's so awesome. And it is interesting, back to the CDC and the misinformation, most of the information we've received was from Israel on different aspects. So our tax dollars have been paying millions, if not even more. You know, you can look it up. Probably closer to billions. And supposedly they were going to do all this research and do everything, and we got very little out of them. And what information we got wasn't exactly correct, and we all knew that. Okay, so let's talk a little bit about Isaac and Rachel. Rebecca. Rebecca. Sorry, I said Rachel. Rebecca. This is one of the coolest stories, I think. So Abraham is still in the south part of what we would call Israel today, the south part. He's from way north, so probably Syria, Turkey area is where he's from. And he doesn't want his son Isaac marrying a Canaanite, one of the locals. Can't marry one of the local gals. We got to get you an import. And from my, just how I feel about it, it's because of their customs and their gods that they worship. It's not a good thing. So he sends his servant, because he's too old to go, and Isaac's got to stay back, and he sends his servant with a caravan all the way up, and basically tells him, and so this is Abraham's brother's son's family. Abraham's brother's son's family. I think that's how it goes. I'm going by memory here. And so there's a relationship here, a relation. He goes, you got to go up there to my homeland and find a bride, an eternal companion for my son Isaac. And this servant is the servant of all servants. I think this is the perfect example of service and being a servant. And right now I'm reading in the Book of Mormon, and I'm in Jacob 5. I haven't started it yet again, but I got right to it this morning, and I'm going to save it and savor it for tomorrow. I just love Jacob chapter 5 and the Lord of the vineyard and the servants. And I'm thinking of Abraham's number one servant and his words and his way about him. Who could say no to this guy? And his faith and his diligence. So chapter 24, verse 12, I absolutely love this verse, and I think it's the key to being the servant of all servants. It's really Christ-like in every aspect. So chapter 24 in Genesis, verse 12, and he said, the servant, O Lord God of my master Abraham. Talk about showing respect and love. I pray thee, send me good speed this day, and shew kindness unto my master Abraham. This is so key. He's not saying, "Hey, bless me. Abraham's given me all these problems, all these things to do, this task that's huge. What if she says no, and I come back?" And he doesn't. It's not about him. He says, just show some kindness unto my master Abraham, and let me be a blessing to him, and have these things come forward, not for me, but for my master. Holy smokes. If our prayers were more like, Heavenly Father, I know that there's a lot of things that need to be done. And I know that you want certain things done. And I know that I can do a small part of that. I want you to bless the leader or someone over me and pronounce a blessing on their head so that I can complete the task that will bless them, which in turn will bless you. Isn't that exactly what Christ did his whole life? And this servant is, as I think about Jacob 5 and the servants in the vineyard, I think, oh, if all the servants were like that, if all the servants, us, were like this servant, there'd be no problems. There'd be no problems in this world. Then what he does, so he makes the journey. He sees the woman at the well, which there's so much to talk about the woman at the well, because we have, Jacob's well. We have Christ being at that same well. This isn't Jacob's well here, but these women at the well, I'm trying to think where women gather today, like it's not at the well, but if you were going to go try to find a wife, or just hear what's going on in the community, I don't know, maybe a gym. I don't know where you go, but that's where the well, that's whatever that place is nowadays. That's what the well was back in the day. Okay. So Rebecca is there, and this servant is so amazing because he tells everything exactly the same every time. There's no bait and switch. There's no deceit, which there's a bunch of deceit all the time in these things, but not with this servant. No deceit. And then he tells Rebecca's father or brother, and then he tells the father, once they say, yeah, come and we'll take care of you, he tells him exactly the same thing. And then it's so cool that Rebecca, even though he agrees, it's not like we always think of the Middle East, you know, it's like, well, this is a done deal. Here you go. Here's my daughter. Take her. It was like, well, let's see what, you know, if Rebecca agrees with it, then we're good. And she did. And he took her back, and the story's cool because Isaac's out there just, I don't know if he's waiting for it. It's almost like a Hollywood movie, you know, and she lights off the camel and they run, and, you know, I don't know if that's how it is, but as reading it, hey, I'm a romantic guy, right? And I think of it that way. So it's pretty cool. So we have this union. Abraham continues to be a father of many nations. He has a bunch more kids. The guy's prolific. He's awesome. Okay, and he does that. Now we have the same story that happened with Abraham and his wife, Sarah, where he says, "Hey, it's my sister. It's not my wife." Remember, we have the exact same thing. So all you guys said, well, technically, you know, Sarah was his sister, and so he wasn't lying. So what are you going to say about this one? What are you going to say about this one? Well, okay, so yeah, you could consider her his sister because she was Isaac's father's brother's son's daughter. I think that's right. So naturally, it's okay to say she's my sister, not my wife. And the king, what was his name? Abimelech. He's like, why do you do that? Why did you do that? He didn't trust us. Everybody just leave them alone. Don't hurt them. They're husband and wife. So we got this weird thing going on of being a little tricky. And it appears that it's to protect the covenant somehow. That's my opinion. To protect the covenant, because it's going through the woman and the seed of the woman. It's always the seed of the woman. In fact, why do I get these women's names mixed up so many times? So Rebecca really pulls a fast one on getting the covenant going through the son that she favored. It says that she favored Isaac, or excuse me, Jacob over Esau. So maybe it's just because he was hairy. I don't know. But in any event, they were twins, and technically, because Esau was the firstborn, you know, typically would have the birthright and the blessing in addition. Kind of two separate things sometimes. So, but we know that he sold Esau sold his birthright for porridge, and then the blessing was really controlled by Rebecca, switching the hands, right? So the woman controls that, and I just love these stories. They're so interesting, and they teach us a lot about the importance of the covenant and where that line goes through. And it just goes down until it comes to Jesus. Till it comes to Jesus, so that prophecies could be fulfilled. So if you go from Christ and go backwards, you can see why these things happen. Okay? It's all about the covenant. At least that's my opinion. Anyway, I love you. I know God loves you, and he loves me too. And we'll talk to you soon.